Have you ever found yourself wondering exactly who the best Smash players in the world were? Well, luckily for you, the recently rebranded UltRank has finally released its rankings for the full 2025 year. Well, most of the year, with a little wiggle room on each side. UltRank, through its algorithm system, ranked players from all across the world from 150 to the single best player in the world. And today I'll be going over the entire ranking, covering each individual section as they come out and listing off interesting tidbits, clarifying some information, and speculating on why these players were ranked where they were. One more thing, the articles and videos for all of these rankings can be found linked in the description or just off of UltRank's Twitter. We're going to jump right into it by taking a look at the first and actually largest section, 150 to 101. This section of the rankings is the only one that didn't have accompanying videos, and mostly exists to showcase those who just missed out on the top 100. Still, there are tons of interesting things to analyze in this large section of players. Players like Lemozona and Midorun being on the cusp of top 100 is super interesting to see, given how they're somewhat under the radar players. But it's easy to forget they had great seasons, especially with Midorun top 8ing a major tournament this year, the only pit player other than Zachary to do so. Hero almost put Bowser in the top 100 again, 2 Mii Gunner mains are in the top 120, and Meister shockingly was ranked under the top 100 for the first time in a full year ranking since Ultimate's release. This is partly because Meister went on a massive hiatus for basically 3/4 of the year, but to many it's shocking that you can top 8 or even win a major and not get ranked in the top 100, compared to a game like Melee where a record like that would have easily given you a spot. This is going to be a trend in the rankings and the reactions to them, where Ultimate has become maybe the most competitive fighting game in the world. Moving a little bit down, Yuzu and M-Popo give Rosalina increasingly more representation despite general opinion of the character going downhill, at least here in North America. And Mr. E falls out of the top 100, placing 130th. Also worth noting that this section of the rankings have 2 Kirbys, with Gyeohyu ranking 108th, the highest ranked Kirby, and with Jaja ranking 128th. The 130 to 150 range includes a lot of European representation, with players like Kid, Natoru, Andres FN, and Mezcal all being down here, and with Mezcal giving Ridley his only representation in the top 150. Lastly, the very bottom of this list includes honorable mentions. What this means is that these players were going to be ranked either in the top 150 or top 100, but they didn't meet the attendance requirements to be ranked. The most notable players here are certainly Didi, Quid, Tilde, and of course, Zachary, who has been missing the attendance requirement for several seasons at this point. Also, funny error here with Wolfen being listed as 38 instead of the HM. People wondered if this was an error that accidentally spoiled where Toriguri, the Japanese banjo, was ranked. But UltRank clarified that this error took from his mid-year ranking, not his upcoming full-year ranking. And that's it for the top 150 to 101 range, with Zachary and Meister being the biggest names to miss out on the top 100, and really impressive placements coming from more under-the-radar competitors. Let's now get into the top 100 in the order they were revealed. 100 to 91 was defined by particularly strange characters. Sure, there were some normal ones like Seattle's Mario, Chag's Palutena, Naocha's Diddy Kong, and Miru's Kazuya. But the other half of this section all piloted unorthodox choices. Noi does play a lot of Olimar, but also plays Pokemon Trainer, which, shockingly enough, is PT's only representation in the top 100. Kuhaku has a Steve, but primarily plays Donkey Kong, one of the several ranked in the top 100. Komei and Base Mage are dedicated solo mains, both giving their characters their only rep in the top 100. Lax is a sort of multi-character specialist, but mains Chrom, putting the character back in the top 100, which most people wouldn't expect past 2019. And lastly, Susu is a Steve main, but does have a Mii Sword Fighter, the character's only rep in the entire top 150, even after the new combo routes that had the internet exploding just a few months ago. Another statistic that I should point out is the fact that of the 10 players in this section, a whopping 7 of them are Japanese, with only Chag at 99, Base Mage at 94, and Susu at 91 being non-Japanese. and all 3 of them being from different countries. Chag from Mexico, Base Mage is American, and Susu's French. This is going to be a massive trend in the top 100, but especially in the 100 to 50 range, because Japan has more majors that are closer together thanks to the country's small size and good public transit, which means that Japanese competitors have tons of opportunities to travel to big tournaments, beat good players, and make big runs. I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing, but it does help explain how Japanese players get their names on the player cards. Speaking of which, since we're now in the top 100, let's take a moment to actually look at these cards and see what they represent. The first card for each player is meant to serve as a broad, more personalized review. The right side has their tag, their real name if it's known, the player's preferred pronouns if they're known, any organization the player might belong to, like a sponsor or a college team, and their region, which is more specific than just their country. In this case, Susu's region isn't listed as France, but rather the specific area of France that he's from. Below this is a brief overview of each player's best placements this season, usually including some examples of a good numerical placement at a major, and then perhaps a smaller tournament with better wins, if it's applicable. Lastly, it's concluded by the player's social medias, if they exist. The left side of the image includes, of course, a good photo and the credits of whoever took it, the UltRank logo, and the number of the player's ranking. This little ribbon separating the left and right side is actually where the most interesting information is. First is characters. Not every character the player used, but at least their main and any prominent secondaries. In Susu's case, his Mii sword fighter saw constant usage, good wins, and even an appearance in a major top 8, if only briefly. These numbers down here are where people will likely start to get confused. This score number was calculated from the algorithm. The higher it is, the higher you're ranked, with number 1 in the world having a score of 100. These 2 numbers are both win rates, one against the top 25 and one against the top 100. As the rankings get higher, so will these numbers. The second card is a far more in-depth look at a player's season. There's also a fun facts panel on the left, with the questions changing every season, and just serving as something fun to have on the card. The questions this season were the tournament you'd most like to attend, the favorite game you played this year, and your favorite animal. Below that are some head-to-heads. The blessing category is anyone who, in this case Susu, had an exceptional record against, and it's usually prioritized by ranked or at least notable competitors. In this case, Susu was 5-0 this year against Rarcure. Rival is any player who kept a very even set count, the higher the better. In this case, Susu and Rawflow had a 7-6 record. Mostly even, but in Susu's favor as indicated by the W next to the 7 and the L next to the 6. Lastly, there's Demon, any competitor who was a big bracket roadblock. In this case, Susu had a 1-7 record against Crepe Soleil. Best wins is relatively self-explanatory. These are the best wins of the player in question, with an indicator stating if there were multiple. These 2 categories on the right translate to placements. On the far right, we've got the player in question's best placements, which are ranked on a sort of hierarchy from top to bottom. The letter on the left translates to the tier of tournament, with anything A and above being a major. And at the bottom, we've got some interesting stats, like how many times Susu top 8'd a major, and how many majors he's won in 2025. This Premier Placements tab is a little bit more complicated. It lists off every single Premier tier tournament that took place over the year, and if the competitor in question attended any of them, their placement is listed. In this case, Susu only attended Kaguribi. Lastly, we've got the ranking biography, which has the most detailed and most complicated information. A few basic stats, when competitors started attending tournaments and how many they attended this year, and the highest they've ever been ranked. For Susu, that's 91. Also, the characters used this season is a more in-depth look at character pools that includes every character known, regardless of impact. Where most people online get confused is this one section. This blue panel was the competitor's ranking in the first half of 2025, but this green one is their ranking for the second half of 2025. But why is there such a disparity between this green number and basically everything else? In Susu's case, he's over 30 points higher in the second half than the full year. Well, this is because the second half, indicated by green, is from UltRank Delta. which is not an algorithm, but rather a panel of people who decide the rankings among themselves. For those who don't know, Melee uses a panel for its rankings, and many people want Ultimate to use the same format. Additionally, UltRank has constantly struggled with choosing between 2 half-year rankings and 1 full-year ranking. UltRank Delta is the stone that took down 2 birds, being a panel ranking that will handle half years, while the normal algorithm handles the full year. It was only created after the 2025.1 season, so they can only use the algorithm ranking this time around. But in the future, the intention is that both of these squares will be green and be representing UltRank Delta. Now that we've gone over how to read these rankings, let's move on to the next chunk. 90 through 81 only has 2 non-Japanese competitors, those being Kiarash, who fell way down to 88 after been having ranked 41 in the half year, and Tarek, who is Greninja's highest ranking representative as well as the highest ranked German player. 2 Isabelle mains have made the top 100, with Kept at 89 and Furararamen at 87. While this may give credence to the Isabelle revolution happening in Smash Ultimate, it's important to remember that both players have secondaries, with Kep's Villager and Diddy Kong, as well as Furararamen's Game & Watch. Other than that, the majority of this remaining section is fairly straightforward. Ataru, aka Alice, at 90, Yonepi at 86, the highest ranked Pichu, Taike at 85, Nyonyo KNB at 83, who will probably be much higher in 2026 given recent events, Ryope at 82, and perhaps most interestingly, Matt at 81. Now this is the one player in this section that could cause you to go, who? But Matt went on one of the biggest under-the-radar runs of the entire year when he won Sumobato SP64 with solo Rosalina, which is in contention for Rosalina's best ever tournament win, especially since Sumobato was inches away from being a major. So Matt is a player who's mostly been making waves at regionals, but the wins are undeniable, which earned him this spot. The next section of rankings, 80 to 71, have quite a few more non-Japanese competitors. We've got Zog, aka Big Duck Hunt fan, at 78, Jackal at 77, Riddles at 76, likely his last ranking unless he returns to Smash, and Candle, who's at 71. The other relatively standard competitors here are 33 Parenbox at 80, Goryoka at 75, and Ryuo at 74, who has recently announced an extended hiatus from Smash. To me, the 3 interesting stories here are from Sin, the highest ranking Ice Climbers player in the world at 73, Gachipi at 72, the highest ranking Lucario in the world, and Ake. Now, Ake's placement at 79, or Character of Peach, isn't really strange. The weird part is that Ake reached this ranking without attending a single tournament in the second half of 2025, which is why he wasn't even given an UltRank Delta ranking for 2025.2. Ake attended the bare minimum for getting globally ranked, which, if you don't know, are attending at least 6 ranked events, including 2 open bracket majors. And that is exactly what Ake did. Nothing more, nothing less. Why was Ake still ranked so high then? It's because his first half of the year was so good. But I won't lie that this is one of the more interesting stories of the first 30 or so players, and definitely puts some of the flaws of UltRank's algorithm into the limelight. 70 to 61 is filled with a vast majority of players that people would consider fan favorites. Take Shattuck, for example, who was ranked 70. For many people, this was incredibly low, but it was an improvement from the 117th of 2025.1, and UltRank Delta put him at 32 for 2025.2. Mars comes in at rank 68, and his second card is one of the smallest of any competitor ranked in the top 100, with only 2 players listed in his best wins. But you know, that is Luis and Mia, so fair enough. Mark's Yoshi jumps up to 6-7 with some last-minute major runs, getting 5th place at the literal last major of the ranking season. Fire's Aegis, who came out of seemingly nowhere back in 2023, scored an impressive 65th. Apollo Kage becomes the highest ranked Midwest player at 64, and fan favorite DeBuzz was right above at 63, his rank being carried by his first half of the year since he wasn't ranked for 2025.2 due to lacking of attendance. And MK Big Boss caps out this section at 61, unfortunately not making top 60 despite having a good year. Just another way this season was so competitive. The rest of this section includes Rimu, Kuroponzu, and Kurofone. And interestingly enough, UltRank actually got the wrong photo for Kurofone. Apparently that's someone else. Ah, there we go. That one's correct. After a short break over the weekend, the next section was 61 through 50, rounding out the bottom half of the top 100. This section was a return to form in the sense that only 2 competitors here were non-Japanese, those being Omega at 58 and Jazo at 51, a placement that was controversial for many. Jazo had been very vocal about his hopes to make top 50, and the fact that he was 1 spot away with a resume like this enraged many. Though it's important to note that wins like Shuton and Riddles didn't mean as much as they would have a year or 2 ago. The rest of this section is Japan Mania, and interestingly enough has a lot of Falco. Masa at 60, a really good placement, Kananabe at 59, the only Fox other than Light to get ranked, Tamayigo at 57, especially insane given that Tamayigo won a major this year and still didn't crack the top 50, something that would be unheard of for a game like Melee. And even UltRank Delta had him at 51. Jagabata at 56 is the highest ranked Duck Hunt player worldwide, and Motsunabe follows at 55. Umeki is certainly the highest ranked TO of all time. Karage is Captain Falcon's only representative in the top 100, and the same goes for Shirayuki's Inkling at 52. Now we move on to our top 50 players worldwide, a huge deal given that the 2025.1 rankings were primarily centered around the top 50. Luis kicks off our list, and he will certainly be higher next year given what just happened at Afterburner and at Varsfest. But fellow NorCal warrior Karama was immediately after at 49. With him even saying on Twitter that he's encouraged to climb even higher and have a true return to form. Crepe Soleil at 48 is the first European player we've seen in a hot minute, and up next is Toriguri, the only Banjo in the top 100. Waka shoots up the rankings at 46, and what's interesting is that UltRank Delta had him even higher at 17th best in the world on their panel ranking. Leaf at 45 is the only Robin anywhere near the top 100, much less top 50, and Maldna HO is the highest ranked Donkey Kong player in the world. Reno comes in at 43, piloting both Sephiroth and Byleth to his only top 100 appearance if you don't count MKLeo, which I don't. Monty's Game & Watch is the first one on the list, ranked well above Meister, which is honestly something no one could have predicted a few years ago. And closing off this section is Shion at 41. Have you all noticed something throughout this section? Yeah, the only top tier characters in the entire list are Game & Watch, Steve, and debatably Palutena. And even when those characters showed up, they were piloted by non-Japanese reps. Just off of the merit of appearances alone, this section may actually be the most unique we've seen so far. Banjo, Byleth, Donkey Kong, Robin, all getting top 50 reps. The meta is far from dead. The 40 to 31 section continues the trend of the section before it, with either non-Japanese competitors, unusual characters, or both. First is Siski cracking the top 40, especially funny given how he said he basically just stopped playing online for the second half of the year and then rose 16 spots in the rankings. Level 1 is the only Toon Link main in the top 100 yet again with an impressive 39th, and Rawflo comes in at rank 38, very cool for him. Lugi is immediately after at 37th, now the second highest ranked European player. Next is Rarikusu at 36, who's not only the highest ranked Falco in the world, but Donkey Kong is there too. Beast Mode Paul comes in at 35th, a bit of a drop from 2025.1, but an understandable one. Next is Uwame at 34, and he's actually the highest ranked solo Olimar player in the world. An impressive feat. Akakikusu comes in at 33, the highest ranked hero player in the world, and technically Sora's only representative in the top 100, followed by Mutes at 32, Paisley's highest ranked player. And capping off this section is Snow, who is higher than I thought he'd be, but I'm not upset about it by any means. Things are now getting really competitive as we head into the top 30, which is filled with many fan favorites who could have placed a lot higher, but unfortunately came up shorter than their fans may have liked. First is Cola at 30, who is slightly lower than the first half of the year, but not as low as UltRank Delta put him for 2025.2. Oh gosh, look at that. On the other hand, Lima didn't even qualify for the rankings in the second half of the year, but his first half was so good, he still clocked in at 29th. Next is Neo, now certifiably the highest ranked Corrin in the world, even though he dropped one spot from the first half of the year to now. Rocky's amazing performance in the first half of the year, including winning a super major, was enough to bring him to 27th. In Melee, that probably could have made him top 5, but again, very competitive game. Yara comes in at 26, striking a nice balance in between his lower 2025.1 performance and higher 2025.2 ranking, as he accumulates back to competition post-hiatus, and came an inch away from winning his and Samus's first major. Ouch is the highest ranked Canadian at 25th in the world, his Battle of BC7 run doing wonders for his rank, and he's followed up by Ken, one of the highest ranked Sephiroth representatives, but the lowest of the 3 Triforce Sonic mains of Ken, Wrath, and Sonics. As a fun fact that I learned from the written blurb, Ken has gotten to grand finals at a major for every single year of Ultimate competition, not counting 2020's pandemic. So that's very cool. Yoshidora comes in at 23, the highest ranked Yoshi main by far, and a solo main with a family at that. After is Pikachu's only representative in the top 150, Shiny Mark at 22nd, also being the sole Central American rep in the top 100. And lastly at 21, Toon makes his debut on the global rankings. Toon wasn't ranked in 2025.1 because of attendance, but exploded onto the scene in the second half of the year, winning his first major at What's the Daily Smash Advice. And regardless of how you feel about Steve, Toon gave South America their first ever major win and a player on the rankings. And that is very cool. Now we make it to the top 20, the last section of the rankings that were revealed not live before LMBM. And this is where things started to get really heated. Not just with the top 20, but the knowledge of who was going to make top 10 because of it. For this section, we'll cover the competitors in order of ranking. Coming in 20th is T, who is a competitor many people kind of forget about in terms of the rankings, but he's the highest ranked Kazuya and Pac-Man representative here. While he is keeping his rank from 2025.1, it's worth noting that lower attendance does see him fall a bit for UltRank Delta's 2025.2 rankings. But again, his run to second place at the Symphonic Smash Major really made T's season. In the 2025.1 rankings, Wrath was ranked 40th, and it was the most controversial thing of the entire top 50. This time, Wrath clocked into the top 20 at 19th place, which still feels kind of low to me, but this is an improvement to be sure. UltRank Delta had him even higher, and I think he's only going to go up over time. Ashimo clocked in at 18th best, another competitor who, just like Wrath, went up from 2025, but is lower than UltRank Delta put him for 2025.2. For Ashimo specifically, he has a lot of bad losses and weird underperformances that really caps the ceiling on his potential. Peebnut is at 17th and is actually a unique case, because even among this section of the rankings, Peebnut is the first player who UltRank Delta put into the top 10 for 2025.2. And it makes a lot of sense, because Peebnut's second half of 2025 was insane. And in fact, the whole year was crazy. Luis might have taken over a lot of the discourse around players to watch in 2026, but if you ask me, Peebnut's right on his heels. Light comes in at 16th, and while a lot of NA competitors might think that's too low, Light was ranked 16th for both halves of 2025, by both the algorithm and the panel. He's also one of the only players who didn't fill out any fun facts, which is no fun. Tamapi Daifuku comes in at 15th place, and if it wasn't for Tweak, Tamapi Daifuku would be the highest placing competitor who was really carried by his first half of the year. He only went down one place from his 14th rank in 2025.1, but the UltRank Delta panel had Tamapi Daifuku at 74th for 2025.2, which does make sense given a stark lack of attendance. But even then, he still would have been the highest ranked Bayonetta because Lima didn't qualify. MKLeo comes in next at 14th place, higher than his 2025.1 ranking of 17th, but lower than his UltRank Delta ranking of 12th for 2025.2. Even though he didn't make top 10, this was still a great year for Leo, winning his first major in a hot minute, and is also probably the highest ranking competitor with this many characters used this season. Gluttony comes in at 13th as the highest ranking European competitor, and 2025, especially the second half, really saw him shifting his focus from Wario to Link. and part of me wonders if Link will be considered his main at a certain point over Wario. Also fun to see that Gluto has no idea what tournament he'd like to attend, and his favorite game this year was Dr. Kawasaki's Brain Training. Feels like there's a joke somewhere there to be made about Unk status, but I'm not gonna be the one to make it. Missing out on the top 10 for the first time since Ultimate's release, Tweak comes in at 12th place. Solely because of his fake retirement that saw him leave competition for most of 2025.2. Now, previously, there were two competitors who had never left the top 10 for Smash Ultimate in its life cycle, Light and Tweak. Light dropped to 16th in 2025.1, and now Tweak drops to 12th for the full year. Heck, Tweak didn't even qualify for the rankings in 2025.2 because of his hiatus. And no fun facts. Regardless, if it wasn't clear, Ultimate is a very different game than it was in 2019. And capping off this section, we've got Shuton at 11th. While not 100% consistent like Tweak and Light were, Shuton is another competitor who almost never dropped out of the top 100. He's always been there for full year rankings, despite occasionally dropping out for half years. Not the case in 2025, as Shuton missed top 10. While he wasn't completely gone like Tweak, most of this is due to Shuton's lackluster attendance in the second half of the year. And this is it, the top 10 Smash Ultimate players in the entire world. First up is Rauru at number 10, surpassing his 12th placement from 2025.1 to finally breach into the top 10. His runs to second place at Super Premier Kaguribi 13 and Super Major Kowloon 15 more than guaranteed his placement here. He's also the highest placing Luigi, though that much should be obvious. Next up, we've got Carmelo, who is technically an Aegis and Shulk representative, but mostly known for Steve. He won the Super Major Sumobato SP57 and made top 8 at every major this year except for one. It's worth noting that both 2025.1 and the UltRank Delta 2025.2 had Carmelo missing out on the top 10. Coming in at number 8 is Zamba, Rob's highest representative. And although he missed out on top 8 at certain events like Supernova and Kaguribi, his big runs at every other Premier Tier tournament solidified his ranking. Also, I have to give a shout out for Zamba listing the Panda Cup as the tournament he wanted to attend, and pot fillers, aka O2ers, as his favorite animal. Zamba truly is Ultimate's villain, but at least he's an entertaining one. Being the highest ranked player in America, Syrup comes in at number 7, also being the only NES rep in the top 100. Syrup won his first major this year at Cavalier Clash 6, but Syrup's biggest strength is his wins. Aquila, Hurt, Spargo, not to mention a whopping 13 wins over Zamba since they're in the same region, which gives Syrup one of the most stacked list of wins you could ever hope for. Number 6 may come as a surprise to some, but Sonics was next up, the highest rep for the character. I honestly thought he'd be a little higher given his win at Port Priority 9, where he finally broke the second place curse. The picture of consistency, Sonics' biggest weakness probably came in his performance at P tiers, where we can see that he didn't make top 8 at any Premier Tier tournament he attended. Number 5 is the highest non-Japanese competitor, Spargo, who also placed 5th in 2025.1 and UltRank Delta's 2025.2. Big shout out for wanting to attend a South American tournament, and if you want to be technical, Spargo is the highest ranking competitor who used a traditional low tier with his Piranha plant. He even won a major in Europe, primarily using the character. Again, Spargo's season was brought down by certain consistency issues, with his 17th at Genesis and 33rd at Kaguribi really hurting him. Coming in at 4th is the Snake Extraordinaire, Hurt, who actually ranked 3rd for both 2025.1 and 2025.2. Overall, Hurt had an extremely strong season, but most of his wins came in the first half of the year, becoming Mr. 3rd place or lower at later tournaments. Aquila is the highest ranking Steve at 3rd best player in the world, going down 1 from 2025.1 and interestingly being 1 place higher than UltRank Delta had him at 4th. If there was one moment that tanked Aquila's chances at top 2, it was his experience at Level Up Expo, where he got 33rd, losing to Kurama and Skinny the Pooh, 2 Mario players. But his distinction for winning Kaguribi, the biggest tournament of all time, or at least post-quarantine, cemented his spot as a legend. And finally, it came down to 2, Mia and Doramigi, battling it out for the spot of the best player in the world. And ultimately, Mia came in at 2nd place in the world, falling just behind Doramigi. an increase from 2025.1's 4th, but UltRank Delta had him at number 1 for 2025.2. Regardless, this means that Doramigi got ranked as the best player in the world for the full year 2025 rankings. Consistency was the name of the game, as Doramigi didn't miss top 8 at a single event the entire year, making grand finals the majority of the time. Personally speaking, I'm very happy for Doramigi, especially considering how young he is. He's the youngest player to ever win a major, and then became the youngest player to ever become rank 1, at least in official Smash titles. So what is the message we should all be taking from this year's rankings? Well, if nothing else, this game has changed in insane ways. The top 10 this season, with Light and Tweak falling out of it, did not contain a single competitor who was even ranked back in 2019. Maybe Spargo would have been had the 2019 rankings been top 100, but it wasn't. The ultimate you once knew does not exist anymore, with new legends rising and surpassing the ones you grew up with. It's the next generation, spearheaded by a kid who only just graduated middle school, and will continue to be dominating for years to come. Maybe that sucks for some of you to hear, but change is inevitable, just like with life in general. That's going to be it for today's video. Until next time, I've been RISTERMICE, and thank you all so very much for watching.